first took over, when it first started.
I don't know where you're going with this, but I don't think we need to have a public grilling of the chief. He's doing what he can do. I mean, it is partially our fault that we didn't have a permanent chief in place by July 1st. It's not his fault he had vacation scheduled.
But it's also the nature, I'm sorry, Chris.
And we've always, you know, we tried to get a full-time fire department here a couple years ago. It got voted down at town meeting. You know, so, you know, not having people during the day to make calls, it's just nature of having a part-time volunteer fire department. I don't think you can blame the chief for these things.
I'm not blaming him, I'm just asking.
Sounds
why.
like you are.
You can.
Chris,
Pat?
it's also July. I mean, everybody goes on vacation at the same time, and it's tough to fill a truck in July, and that's why you call the other towns. That's why they're there.
That's why we're in mutual aid.
Right. That's why we have
I
them always
understand
there,
that. It's just,
waiting for us.
When people see vacation notice on the door and it's an interim position, I believe they are entitled to know why and the circumstances. Because I just didn't believe, I didn't think that an interim position, you go on vacation.
Well, that's a vacation planned at the time. You can go, it's just I did not get paid for it. That's been...
I don't have a problem with that. I just, you know, whatever. I'm not going to get into it.
Saying that you can't go into the guys during town meeting time. You did. What's the difference?
Yes. Yes.
I have a question. What's the schedule for interviewing candidates? My sense is that the board doesn't really have any sense of urgency.
No, actually, they're having a meeting Wednesday to go over the format, I believe. Is that?
Yeah. I believe we have a couple of area chiefs who are going to meet with us. I think Virginia and I are part of that committee, so it's like a subcommittee of the select board, not the whole committee. We're going to work with the area chiefs, come up with questions, figure out who to interview, if they're still interested in the position, because it has been such a long time since we posted the position, and then go from there and schedule interviews.
So do you think within a month you'll have a candidate, a final candidate?
I would say maybe September would be a better time frame to give us enough time.
It's not partially the Board of Selectmen's fault. It is the Board of Selectmen's fault for not filling that position and not taking an aggressive approach to scheduling interviews and getting the job done.
Yes.
Chris, is Larry even certified to be a firefighter 1 or 2? Has he taken the state cert?
Yes, I have. I got my certificate of completion for a firefighter 1 and 2.
And you passed the state certification?
There is no state certification. There never has.
Just did the practical or you've done the book on it?
I took the course when we had it here in town. We had the academy teaching up at Mary Anson 6 months. Firefighter 1 and 2.
That was just the practical? How about the certification?
The certification too.
We're talking the same thing. That was exams inside classrooms plus.
What is it, Dave?
I think there's some knowledge being left out here that the board needs to look at. I think you need to talk to the past chief or somebody else that can lay issue to this thing.
Well, I mean, he's an interim. All this other stuff.
Doesn't matter.
We need to be careful because this is going to needs to be an executive session.
Certified.
Right, so
Well,
Having somebody do a job that a basic firefighter 1 that's certified.
this is
I mean,
something
I'm just setting you up.
all right, we need to stop. We need to stop the discussion because this leans on something that should almost be an executive session. So, okay. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Feel free to go. And I apologize.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Discuss bills to the water department for the overtime for highway department employees, including the supervisor, for the water main breaks. I don't know who is discussing this, or if this is
Who put
something that
this
should
on?
just go to before Light and
Jack,
Water.
who put this on the,
It came forward as a issue out of the highway department, that we always bill the employees. The bill is
Yes.
whether
I have a question on that. You're looking at just the employees. My question goes a little more than that because of the budgetary problems we have and the equipment that was used from the highway department. Are we getting any compensation for that? Because, I mean, if there was a breakdown, it would be on the highway department. And that, I think that puts undue pressure on their budget for this coming year.
Well, but you want to come up? I mean, I can see where you're coming with the equipment, but, I mean, it's all part of the town, so, you know, I don't think he had any equipment issues.
Yeah, it did.
We need to,
okay.
yeah. And I think this probably should just go before the Light and Water Commission, not before us, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
when
we're
not
generating the
submitted,
bill.
Are we billing them or not?
Okay.
Is the question.
Okay.
We're billing them for the employee time.
Right.
Question.
All right, so there's two bills here. There's one for your workers, which we will generate to the water department. I'm guessing that's how it goes in the past.
That's correct.
Now, what about your bill? Have you gotten paid in the past when you've come in on these
I
calls?
haven't been working in water works as a highway superintendent.
Okay,
The day of, I was called in by the dispatch to look at the road damage in the area of the first break, which is on, right by Harris's. It was all rippled up if you drive by. I asked the manager if he needed some help and whether he wanted me to stay. At the time of the first water break, our rubber tire excavator was broke down at the senior center, and the first call out of the highway department went out to one of my employees. He called me at home and said that he could not get the machine started. We did have a problem with it at the end of the day. So I informed him that the machine was broke down, and that's when he went on to tell me he had 7 breaks. 10 minutes after that, I got the call from the dispatcher to come in for the police department. When I arrived, I talked to John Driscoll and asked him if he needed my services, if he wanted me to stay. We were trying to line up additional equipment to dig all the problems that they had. I was able to contact Boucher Equipment. They were going to loan us their rubber tire excavator. I went down, picked it up, brought it to the first job. In the meantime, I went down and my foreman and I, we went down, we got our excavator operating, we got it started, we brought it to the water job so that we had 3 machines to dig the 8 water breaks. So I asked him if he wanted me to stay on. He asked me if I could stay on.
okay.
So what I've done here is, because I am a salary employee, I calculated my hours and my rate, and we talked about it with Mr. Ritter, and I think Jeff was in the office at the time, or Julie, I'm not sure. And we talked about submitting it to the water department to see if they would pay it.
Okay.
The ball really lies in their court whether they're going to pay it or not.
Okay.
I know the water superintendent normally gets compensated for water breaks all the time.
Okay. So, go ahead.
It seems as though it was, he was called in, 3 different people called him in, one to look at road damage, one to fix the equipment, and then the police department. So it was certainly seems that it was justified for him to be there.
Well, it's with 8 water breaks all in the same area, water tank empty, no fire protection. The reason I stayed on was to help restore services so that they would, we can get the water back onto the boats.
I think this just needs
I'm
to
not trying to
go.
take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I work 17.25 hours as hard as everybody else in the heat, and
I saw
my
you.
feeling is that I feel like I'm entitled to compensation.
And
Good.
when I looked at what we had for, budgeted for unknown overtime allowance,
Yeah.
it was cut from, the request was $3,200. The final budget was $1,200. That basically zeroes out this account.
Right.
So we need to find, I mean, we haven't even plowed, okay? So we have an issue, and I believe that this is the proper way to deal with it, to bring it before the board. Everyone's on the same page. We do regularly pay the water superintendent overtime. It's in the water department contract that there is one shift, I think, a month where he covers on call, and there's a rate calculated for that. So I think it would be fair and equitable to make sure that Bud gets paid as well.
Mr. Chair, how we work this so as far as my highway staff being called out for water breaks and whatnot or on overtime is that we pay them out of our overtime account. We bill the water department. They in turn pay the bill, whether it's one man or how many men. And then we replenish it goes, we roll it back into the highway overtime account. That way not two departments are paying one employee, which is a conflict. We pay the employee, we do the billing, we bill it back. That's how it will work with myself in the event of, I'm on hold for payment until money gets put back into the account. And what we discussed in the coordinator's office was that I would wait until money shows up to pay me.
Frank?
How much is the total bill for the highway department to charge for water?
For the whole highway department or just for Bud?
My question is the water department is an enterprise. So I believe an enterprise should pay their own bills. So I believe that the highway department should be entitled to everything. Second thought, Mr. Chase, Boucher, did you have to pay him or did you do it for free?
Yep.
He volunteered his machine to the best of my knowledge. Unless he's generated a rental bill to the water department that I'm not aware of.
And the second question I got, Mr. Boucher from Leominster, we maybe got 6 contractors in town. You could have called any one of those taxpayers that haven't worked on any kind of emergency. We used to do that years ago. I mean, Boucher volunteered for nothing, that's one thing. But not be hired somebody from Leominster, you get taxpayers, they get their equipment sitting home.
They didn't come run the equipment. They just let us use their machine, right? Or did they come run the equipment?
I believe Boucher was called because one of the water breaks was on Summer Street. The water department felt that that was part of their project, was on Summer Street. So they were called in to take care of their water break. Later on, as the day or the morning went on, they fixed their repair. The water department talked to them about repairing another section of town. Whether or not there was any cost involved in that, you'd have to go through the water department to find that.
I thought you just used their equipment.
That's the total.
I borrowed their rubber tire excavator, and when they had another machine down on a job to fix their problem, and then they came and took their excavator to work on a water break somewhere else in the area.
So my question I'd like to have answered, are you going to use people in town in emergency, or are you going to call people from Leominster? I pay a lot of taxes, and not just me, I'm talking maybe half a dozen contractors in town. We used to have a policy one time that they would hire contractors in town for town work. I'm not sure what happens to that policy, but I think it's only fair to the taxpayers in town.
Okay, but I mean, it wasn't our call, but go ahead.
I think eventually, actually fairly soon, this board is going to have to come up with some decision as to what we're going to do, because the highway equipment can't take that kind of a beating. It's just not going to make it, and we need it to last at least through this next winter. So I don't know how to deal with that, but I think it's something that we need to discuss and figure out a policy. Maybe, future instances like multiple water breaks should be handled by the water department with private contractors, because the equipment just can't take it.
Mr. Chairman, past practice, The water department is paid for the overtime for the employees. We've never back-billed them for the equipment that they use and or the fuel that it took to repair. Just to bring it and put it on the table.
So,
I just wanted to, I realize what Bud's saying, he's been pretty nice with the water department, but, you know, we chopped his, just to keep in mind, we chopped his gas and diesel account, did we not? When we were chopping the budgets, I believe your, I don't know what it's called here. Fuel account, thank you. And we chopped that. I mean, you know, I think other expenses should be taken into consideration. Yes, it's all paid by the taxpayers, however, you know, water department doesn't get chopped because they're an enterprise fund, but Bud's budget got chopped. And I think he, you know, I think we should look at in the future, making sure he gets reimbursed with not only, you know, his laborers and himself, but the rest of the department, you know, the fuel costs and stuff.
yes, Chief.
I'd like to bring up a point, Mr. Machete brings up a good point. I have a very simple and easy answer for we probably should have went to a state of emergency through MEMA. We didn't. Rich Curtis was out there, I was out there, we were all out there. I don't think there was a department that wasn't in there. I know I even had a phone call from Mr. Ritter. We didn't. We probably should have. We didn't. But through MEMA, we have been creating a resource pool, a computerized resource pool of our own equipment, our regional equipment, and there's no reason why we can't incorporate on-call equipment within our community, because it would have been a great resource for us to reach out for at that time. And I'll speak to Rich Curtis and get together with some of the partners meeting and get that started.
Okay.
Because, you know, I do it with my phone companies. They have to give me a list of what they have. You know, the fire department, I know what they have. I know what my other area police departments have, but I know what's really available in my own community. So it's something we can, I know because I know some of the people.
Okay, yep.
We can figure out what wants to be on our list and start.
Virginia?
I spoke recently to the head of the water department in Chelmsford, and just because I happen to be sitting next to him somewhere, and he said that we need to be careful because he knew he had a water problem here. That's how he brought it up when he found out I was from Templeton. And he said that like the fire department has mutual aid, belongs to a mutual aid system. If the water department does not belong to the same kind of a mutual aid system, then they will not get reimbursement by MEMA.
Chris,
Yes.
I think we should make a motion to send these two bills off to the water department.
Well, the water department's going to pay the first one.
What's wrong with Bud's?
It's just Bud's that, well, we don't know that they won't, but
You
that's,
can't.
I would say we should, yeah, right, we should send a recommendation to the water department to pay Bud for his time for this.
$2,700 is cheap money.
That's right.
Yes.
I was in Baldwinville that day at the senior center, and on my way home, I stopped to look at a big hole that Bud was down there. And he didn't have to stay, he got bailed out. It was hot, it was miserable.
I was there when,
They had a real big problem.
I was at Bud's hole too.
Thank God that we did not have a fire.
Oh, yeah, I know.
The water department has to open this one somewhere, somehow.
And I'm sure they will. We're not even questioning that they won't.
They should absorb the cost of having him there because he did help them.
Like he said, he hasn't had to do a water main break since he's become the superintendent. So that's, he just wanted to, you know, get our judgment, and my judgment is I think we should send the light department or water department a letter saying that we would recommend that they pay Bud for his time for this.
Mr. Chair, at an earlier meeting today, I heard a number come from the manager that whether all the costs are in, but $21,000 for the total for the bill. So, and I know the water department works in a very red area. I don't know one thing. By 11:30 at night, we had the water restored. So 17 hours.
Okay. Well,
it's about an hour for every water.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay, that's all I can ask. I mean, if they,
Yeah. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes. Do we need a vote? I think.
Well, Pat made a motion, so.
Oh, all right, I'll second his
All right,
motion.
so this will be to just send to the water department recommending that they pay Bud for his services. Pat?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
okay.
Yep.
As far as the future, I know I talked to the town coordinator about it. We may want to look together, sit down together with the board and discuss that if we are going to supplement our fleet out for emergencies and whatnot, whether we should be charging a rate. I'm not suggesting that. It was just an open dialogue that we started, whether or not, because typically we are putting the fuel in the equipment and we're not charging an hourly rate.
If I can remember, I'll try to bring it up.
I'm very neutral about that, so I mean, I know we're helping out somebody in town.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have discuss policy on leave accruals for employees recently affected by reduced schedules, prorated or non-prorated. Who has to have this on? Or is it something?
Who has to have this on?
Phil brought it forward. In fact, I can brief this one.
Okay.
Phil's coming too.
That we cut the pay of a number of individuals.
Yep.
13 employees.
Okay, you need to be quiet, please. Sorry.
And when we did that, we looked into the personnel policy in the town bylaws, which say that you earn your benefits pro rata based on the number of hours you work.
Okay.
So when those letters went out to the named individuals, it had a sentence in there that said you will receive a pro rata reduction in your benefits, your accrual of vacation time, sick leave. Of course, their contribution to Worcester County retirement is reduced, so the number of hours that they accrue toward pension benefits is reduced. Their concern is that through no fault of their own, not only was their pay affected, but their benefits were affected.
Okay.
They brought this to the Personnel Board, who discussed it at the Personnel Board meeting of 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And we heard the brief at the Personnel Board. I should let the members who are present speak to that issue, but the Personnel Board looked very favorably on this request and went so far as to suggesting that I send another letter out clarifying or amending it, which I cannot do until the board hears the issue and directs me to do so.
Okay.
So that's why we're here this evening.
All right, so I'll let the chairman of personnel take it over.
According to the personnel policy, it does state that full-time employees receive 8 hours per month. It's not a per day thing. The point, the contention of that was brought up was now that it says full-time employees are 40 hours per week, and so part-time is 20 hours or more, up to 40, and so there was questions and concerns that how are we going to do our sick days and vacation days. And after discussion, and there's 2 board of selectmen, myself and Virginia, on the personnel board, we're in agreement that since they got hurt on their hours, which affects how much money goes into their retirement and things, that we should not kill them on this. And it's one of the things that we were going to discuss, inserting new language or recommending new language into the personnel policy. But it was we took a vote, it was our recommendation to recommend to the Board of Selectmen to do what the bold motion on the bottom of this item in number 9 is.
Okay.
Is to give them, rather than prorate, to give them their full-time sick time and vacation time accrual. So, I mean, it's bad enough we bang them on their hours and they lost, they're part of their salary, not to take their sick time and vacation time from them. So they would continue to earn their 40 hours, their full time Because I know they are doing, 35 hours, but they are full-time employees.
Right, they're still full, as far as I'm concerned.
We were going to recommend, Personnel Board voted to recommend to the Select Board to in fact do this, to keep their vacation and their sick time as full-time employees.
Yep. Makes perfect sense, because
I mean, they have taken the brunt of the budget stuff, so it was just...
most places where you work, a full-time employee doesn't have to be 40 hours. So it's usually 32 or more.
We need to look at that.
Yeah, I just want to mention that.
Again, it's the personnel policy that's...
We were told, these guys told, that those of us who were salaried both at 40 hours, we're still salaried, so even though we didn't get paid for 35, if we have to work, we still have to work and get the work done.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
no, I don't have a problem with that if somebody wants to make that motion. Go ahead.
Just to make sure everybody's heard, and I'm not sure if they're here or not. One employee did come and say that they don't think that it's fair for that person to have to work 40 hours in order to accrue that time, and they only have to work 32 or 35 to accrue that time.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So just making that.
Yes,
I know this is a new issue with the town of Templeton on this particular policy. Has anyone on the board, personnel, or even the three employees here or any other employee looked at any other town? Because what I've noticed in my research here in the last week since this came up was I looked at a number of towns and we're not the only ones to run into this issue. I'm sure there's an equitable thing out there that somebody else has done that we should take a look at to take it end up satisfying this problem not only immediately but long term. So my advice is that we should be looking at this from a perspective of, yes, this is our first time, but what have other communities done? Because I just ran into one community that talked about 35 hours, and it's so, it really stood out at me when I looked at that over this weekend and said they had dropped the hours to 35 hours and they have a policy in place to address something like this. That's what I would suggest on doing.
Mr. Chairman, if I will speak.
Okay. Go ahead.
That was part of the personnel board at the end of the meeting was our homework assignment for our next meeting is to go through the personnel policy and the bylaw and write down questions or highlight things that we need to address to change and make it a more coherent policy. But again, it was our vote that we do this for the employees of Templeton now. And again, it's going down the road to fix this stuff and to get it straightened out. Because it just seems like it's the fairest, it's the simplest, and they deserve it.
Gene.
Us non-union were asking for 1 year to meet our benefits alone. When the union comes to the board and the board says, we have no money to give you, the union usually says, you've got to give us something in lieu of compensation. And in the past, the union has received additional vacation days in lieu of compensation. We have now had our pay cut and our Worcester regional cut, and now you're taking our benefits away. We're asking for 1 year, while we're thinking this cut is only good for 1 year, that we remain at 40 hours for all our vacations, sick, and personal time. That's what we asked the personnel board. They made a recommendation to the board of selectmen to write a letter back to us to say for 1 year, your benefits are the same. Why does the non-union have to take the brunt? Because you can't do anything to the highway union, the dispatch union, and the police union. We took the cut.
Phil?
Unfortunately, we are collateral damage due to the dysfunctional budget process. I like what Will says. I like planning. I like knowing ahead. I like the fact that Jeff right now is starting a budget process so we don't end up in a dark corner like we were last year, desperate, and we're low-hanging fruit. We don't have a bargaining unit at this time. So we already took away our hours. Leave our benefits alone for this year. The personnel policy needs a lot of work. Personnel committee's going to work on that, trying to get the language together. Yes, you can look at other towns. In the meantime, just leave that alone. Any holiday that happens on a Friday, we'll either take it on the nearest day or we'll take it as a floater. We've heard enough. We got to make it through the whole year. Us and our families, and I know you said it was hard for you doing it, but we have to actually live it. So we ask your support for this. We're not looking to set a precedent policy. We're just looking to stop in time while we get things together so we don't repeat this.
I've been working for over 4 years, so you're telling me that all the sick time that I've been so good at not using, I'm getting, I don't want to be a bad word, but I mean, so all that time that I've accumulated at 40 hours, now you're saying all of that is only now prorated at like 32 hours? I mean, that's not fair. I've earned those 40 hours from my sick time, and I mean, I shouldn't have to get a lesser prorated amount.
Right.
I've kind of figured it out. I've already given back to the town $5,653. And so if you take all my sick time and everything, so I'm giving out like another over $500. So it's like $6,000 here, Templeton, enjoy it. And it's only 13 of us. That is just ridiculous. That's just not fair.
Yes.
If we pay out this accrual at 40 hours, this is a change in the hours, what effect will it have on the budget? Aren't we already budgeted for a certain amount?
Go
ahead.
No, because we all know this is what we get paid a week. All we're asking is that, you know, when we have take a personal day, that personal day, we get 8 hours. I mean, you know what you're knocking us off for us for personal days? We get 3 a year. Instead of 24, we're going to get 21. You're taking away 3 lousy extra hours, but to us, that's something.
Right.
It's something more we have to give. And I'd like to address where Virginia said somebody complained to her about that it wasn't fair because they were 40 hours. I'd like to say to that person, they're lucky they didn't get cut. And I believe that their option of why they didn't cut was they had someone else in their office they could cut. We chose not to do that. Sure, I could have turned around and said, hey, Luann, I'm cutting you 10 hours. But we didn't do that. We took the hit along with our assistants. And I mean, to say that is just, that's just not, I've been here 8 years, over 8 years, almost 9 years, and to nickel and dime me over 3 hours of personal time, an extra, what does it come out with, vacation time? It's an extra 15 hours a year vacation time. We know not to go over the 35 hours per pay week. We know not to spend more than we have in our salaries budget. It's just, like I said, look at all of us who got cut. Look at the 13 that got cut. Look at where we are. We're all, the majority of us are over the age of, Gene, you 50 yet?
That's a personal question.
We're all over 50. The majority of us are over 50. We're watching how much we make for retirement.
Glad you asked that question.
Lucky that's all you are. My God, you know, it's...
No, I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Some people don't understand.
Oh, I know.
But no, it's not going to affect us.
Jane?
No, I'm not 50, but a person who receives 4 weeks vacation, they will accrue 140 hours. If you cut us down, you're now 140 hours, and we have lost 20 hours of our vacation time that we have earned from being with the town for numerous years. We cannot get paid any more than 35 hours a week, so if we accrue 40, as you said, we bank it, we have it in there, and it's not costing them anymore. It's something that we have earned from the years of service for the town. So just like I said, ask them to write us a letter, like we've done with the unions in the past, we're giving them free vacation days for 1 fiscal year only. We're just asking them to make
Anybody on the board have anything to comment?
Can I say something first?
Real quick.
I worked at DuPont, New Hampshire, it was a big company at that time. And whenever they were on short hours, meant they could cut back like 32 to 35 hours. They always maintained their benefits. And I have a suspicion that this is what will happen here. But you guys are putting the cart before the horse. So, we'll just try to work things out.
Sure.
I'd like to move that employees affected by the reduction of hours for FY 2013 shall accrue vacation and sick leave at the same rate as they were accruing prior to the reduction in hours.
Second.
Any other discussion by the board? Yeah.
You granted first, period.
Okay, Julie?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And Patrick?
Yes.
I'd like to make an additional motion.
Go ahead.
That employees affected by the reduction of hours for FY 2013 be allowed 2 additional floating holidays to deal with the Friday holidays.
Is that, wait a minute, because of, is that how many Friday holidays we have?
Correct. The day after Thanksgiving and Veterans Day, which are Friday holidays that they will not be paid if we're closed on Friday.
Okay.
Just grant them the equivalent of the 8 hours pay they would earn on that day if you were working.
All your, all right, so, now do we want to, I'll take a second on Julie's second motion first. Okay. So now my question is, do we want to give them 2 additional floating days, or do we just want to pay them the 8 hours holiday on the day?
Well, I'm not sure the budget can withstand the 8 hours of pay because those were days that were eliminated from the budget. We could ask the advisory what their thinking was in terms of the planning, but since they're paid 35 hours a week.
Right, because it wouldn't be overtime.
Right.
I see what you're saying, though. They may have to take a day.
They may have to take the time rather than be paid for the time.
Yeah.
And I think each budget is a little different. There might be a little flexibility in some budgets and not others, but we don't, unless you really do the math right to the penny, you don't know whether there's enough.
So we'll just leave it as it is. Any discussion? Seeing none. I got seconded, right? Yeah, Jeff seconded it. Okay. Julie?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
Okay.
She's still working 45 hours a week.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Alan Mayo, you're finally up. Hi there, how are you? Okay. Quiet, please. The last time we met with you, we had a quick discussion on reorganizing your Temple and Common Improvement Committee, and you were going to get some more info and come back. So what do you got?
I took Jeff's advice, thank you very much, and I scheduled a meeting. It was an unofficial meeting because none of them had been sworn in, and so we couldn't do any business or anything. We simply discussed the makeup of the committee and what the selection would do to help us. It was unanimous, 6 members there. They decided it would be nice if the selectmen sent out letters to each committee member asking if there was interest, see what we get back, and work from there. And optimum number of the committee would be around 7.
7? What are you at now?
We're at 10, but I think there are some alternates on there.
Okay. So you'd like to have a committee of 7. Okay, so you want us to send letters to all the people on the committee?
Were on last year.
Okay.
And just see what their interest is and if they can commit to it.
Okay, but they need to be able to, how many came to your meeting?
The last meeting we had 6 came.
6?
Which is the highest number we've had since March.
Okay.
So I think by coming to the select.
So can we do that, Mr. Ritter?
I will do it forthwith.
Okay. All right, and then you had Arts and Crafts Fair banner.
Yes, I have a request from the Arts and Crafts Fair to put up the banner, and as you know, we had a discussion about the banner on Common and the state not allowing it to go on the state road.
Yep.
As you know, we've been doing that for many, many years, but because the state says no now. I have come up with a possible solution. I have talked to Bud Chase and the chief about this solution. They didn't seem to have an issue with it. I think it's a temporary solution, but it would resolve the issue with the Arts and Crafts Fair this year and also the
Fronco Fair.
The Fronco Fair. And my suggestion would be that we allow the light department to put up 2 poles on that little dog leg between Baltimore Road and Patriots Road near the World War II monument, and put the banner across there. It's as close to that area as we can get it. It's on a town road, and it will only be temporary for those 2 events. In the meantime, we can try to address where we could possibly find the location for it.
Yes.
Mrs. Whittle called me earlier this evening and wanted to apologize for not being able to be here tonight to support you. So I just wanted to pass that on.
So I don't know, did everybody hear where he wants to put the 2 poles to, well, you were involved in this conversation anyway, right, Bud? And it would just be poles for the banner, right?
Yes, it would just be poles for the banner, and it would be temporary for this year.
Okay.
I would rather find a more suitable location.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time for those 2 events, and they've done it for years and years.
Right.
I hate to shut down a local event and tell them they can't do it, but on the state road they can't. The request that they made to me was that they wanted me to put 2 poles right in the middle of that green on the common. And I said, no, that's not good. So I kind of suggested that we went to this route as an alternative.
And where is it exactly? The little island where the monument is?
As you go up Patriots Road from Town Hall, you would make the left to get on Ball Road, that little street there. Put a pole on each side of that, banner across that. Okay. Great.
Is the traffic going to see that?
Are people going to see it though?
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
What about the beginning of the Baldwinville Road when you're coming up Patriots Road from like Templeton Center? When you take the right?
That's a possibility too.
But we don't want to do anything permanent there until the construction starts.
No, but
it'd be permanent anyway. Like I said, I'm just trying to get through these 2 events.
Yeah.
So we can get this year.
I just think it would be pretty close to where
it was
been.
before.
When you're going down Patriots Road,
It would just be on Baldwin Road instead of 2A.
I'm open to that.
I mean, either or, I'm for.
What do you? Huh?
I guess you're supposed to be reading it.
Oh, you want me to read it? Okay.
No, just,
Oh, I read it personally.
okay, all right,
Did you guys
then pass it, Joe.
So what's the board's feeling? Should we go on that little road? Would that technically, that's Wellington, isn't it? The little Wellington strip?
I believe that we consider Wellington.
Or do we want to see if we can go across Baltimore Road right at the end?
Didn't the chief tell us before we couldn't go across?
We can't go on Patriots Road.
Can't go on Patriots Road.
I know, but I think he said.
Go ahead.
I just concur with Alan on it. I think it's a good temporary site, but I think we could look at some alternatives. And I suggested the front of the Templeton Center fire station, if we could at some point in time, maybe erect something on both sides of that, maybe right across there, it wouldn't even be over a public way. It would be more visible.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could do that structurally, how we would do it. I don't know what the distances they need for those poles, or we might be able to just add something to the fire pack itself without those poles. But that'd be a pretty good stuff. I kind of looked around after the whole park.
Yeah.
I thought maybe the front of the country store or something like that, but there's not a lot of places to look.
There was no, when we had this discussion earlier in the year, when that Monty Tech sign was up, there was no restriction if we put it across the end of Baldwinville Road, was there?
As long as the state won't let you put it across their road.
Which is 2A.
And it's up to the town, if we want to put one out, it's up to us. It's really up to me, and I have no objection to it. I mean, that was years ago.
Yeah.
did have an objection.
I think it's a good temporary, it's supposed to go in and come out.
Yeah.
We find a better place.
Right.
One of the things with following the road though is, I don't want to speak for the light department, I think they're here.
Yeah.
But I don't believe they want to be that close to power.
Okay.
I think they want, that's why we were looking at that location, there's no power lines right at that location.
Okay.
And it seems to be an open area, where they wouldn't tag any power line poles or anything like that in case of the wind break.
So,
If you hit it on the fire station,
well, that's something we'd have to look at.
it's lovely, with what I heard, and then
Yeah. But,
Mr. Chair, have you thought about using the message board for these activities? Put the message board up in a common somewhere, light it up when you're all done, you fold it up and take it back.
It's a possibility, I can't speak for.
I know, I'm just sitting here, I'm just thinking about it. We got a message board
I
there.
need a neon sign on the common.
Not being used during that time. We only have
which one, the one at the school?
yeah, the one that's displayed at the school, so, I mean, you know, we've used it for the highway department for announcing the paving.
Yeah.
You know, we can take it any time we want, it's owned by the town or the board of health.
I thought it was owned by the Board of Health. That's what I had heard in the past. Yeah.
So,
Because I know the school uses it constantly.
that's an option.
I think the reason why the arts and crafts and the Furnival Fair people looking for the banner is because they both work there.
Yep.
And they have to, that's why.
Have you talked to anybody from the arts and crafts about putting it where you're suggesting? And they were okay with that?
They met us at the same time that I met the Lake Water plant manager up there.
Okay.
Discuss the location.
So do you want us to make a motion on that?
I would like to accept it, if you would, these two events.
All right. So somebody wants to make a motion allowing them to put a temporary poles across that beginning stretch of Wellington Road between Patriots and Bonneville Road for the banners for the Arts and Crafts Fair and the Furnival Fair.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Pat?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
Did you guys? They will. What do we got?
Completion report from the tomb restoration for this year, that's what went to the state last week. And
Oh,
we
okay.
expect reimbursement back.
Awesome. So you're done?
And that's for your office, okay?
Great. So they fixed all the problems?
Well, they fixed the 3 tombs that we were.
Right. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody have any other business on the board?
I just have one thing. I've been looking at other towns and considering how some things have gone. So I took it upon myself to come up with policies and procedures for the Board of Selectmen, ideas on how to do things from appointing people, posting meetings, agendas, when material has to be in and so forth. Again, this is just an idea that I came up with and I took the time because I'm a nut and I like to spend time doing this stuff. I was going to pass it out for each selectman to read over and maybe at the next meeting tell me if it's junk or if it's worth talking about and maybe discuss it.
Okay. Do that. Julie?
I actually had 2 items that,
And there's enough to give Jeff or one for that.
thank you.
Or Nancy or whatever.
Yeah, if they need to put them in.
I had 2 items.
Yep.
I think after the water breaks on July 14th, I think it would be useful to ask the water department for a report on what happened and maybe why it happened. I'd like to know, like, the sequence of the breaks and when they happened, time-wise.
Yep.
I think that might be useful information to have. I'm not exactly sure. I'd like to know how fast the standpipe at U Incorporated drained, you know, for fire protection. And maybe look at the historical pattern of water breaks throughout the town. I know there was one over at Sawyer Street. I think there was one this weekend on Maple Street by Grove Street. I think there was work down there. So I think this is information that I think the townspeople should have, and I believe we as a board should have as well. The other thing is I did attend the CDBG Back Bay Grant meeting today, and there was some discussion about a Phase 6 and whether we were going to try to fund a Phase 6, whether it would be Memorial Street, whether it be another part of town. So I think that's something that we should look at to get public input, because that grant would have to be, if we chose to do another phase, we need to find out where the money's going to come from, and we have to figure out which part of town.
Okay. Yeah, because we probably have to do a new
Right, you have to
study.
do a whole new thing. Right, income survey.
Yeah.
Just depends on, you know, and we should probably get some public input. So if we put it out there that, you know, we may look at this grant again.
Yeah, okay.
I think public input would be useful.
Did Mike have any feelings on it?
They came up with a couple of different scenarios, Memorial Street, Graves Development, or maybe some roads in East Templeton, so you do the income surveys on those roads.
Yes.
I'd love to give some public input on that right now. With the 5 phases that have happened in the Back Bay, the town, many lots didn't have to go after the road surfaces or anything involved with that for many, many years. Phase 6, Memorial Street, if it does, if the income survey works out, would be the last phase for that one section of town. Start the project, finish the project, then start others.
Okay, any other? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Well, I did, but... What do you got? Sure.
Through the chairman, I want to ask Virginia Wilder one question.
About what?
About why she paid the conservation agent $220 when he didn't have it coming.
I saw that he would put in the office, actually. I believe he did.
It's right here.
Well,
I did the paperwork right there where he took all that sick leave. Because he's a snake and he's gonna cheat. And I proved it. But you guys ain't sticking up for me lately. She is, and he is. Don't look into that. I don't want to scare you.
I'm not scared. I was looking to Jeff because he had made some comments to me on this in the past. I didn't know if he had any other...
We used the information we had, and it's certified by the chairman of the commission. That's all we can go on. We don't have, it's a larger issue for the town is time and hours reporting, which the personnel board and members of the board is...
What do I do after him?
Well...
One of the things that when they came before the advisory board, we are going to end up somewhat trying to help the town address that, because we anticipate that we're going to see this probably as people leave, not necessarily as retirement, that this has to be addressed. This has to be addressed in a number of ways. One is put a system in to capture that, rather than leave it up to somebody who can end up just signing a piece of paper and thinking every way is word. Just put a system in place to capture vacation, sick time, etc. That has to happen. The other thing is, if we end up having that come before the board, as especially in this particular case, it was extraordinary outside the budget, our intention is to end up having that department head and the person that signed come before the board and try to end up giving us some idea as to the process that they ended up going through, whether they actually checked on that employee or not, or just did a signature. We need to end up understanding that and try to end up advising other boards as well as maybe a selectman as to putting the process in place to address that, and not necessarily signing something if it's put in front of you.
Okay. Well, as Jeff said, that they did check with the chairman of that commission before they signed. Excuse me?
I'm talking you people, not George Andrews. He don't even know what foot to put in front of him first.
Well, that's all we have to
I've been doing
depend on.
this. I've been doing this for years. If it wasn't for that guy over there, somebody would understand English. Don't try to respect the law.
Well, he's gone now. He's out of your hair. You don't have to worry
I don't
about
want to pay him $220 to get out of here. I made complaints 5 years ago on him. And Grimley, and Andrews. On paper to you people.
it. I've never seen anything on Mr. Andrews.
Of course not.
I've seen the
I
others.
got 10 of them, so don't tell me what you've seen them.
On George, I have not. I've seen things on Sean, and I've seen things on Dave.
Too late. As Carol's got under the rug.
We're not going there. We're not going there. We're not going there.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just to address, just to comment on what you stated, Will, that's one of the things that I circled in the personnel policy. There is a requirement that states that every department is supposed to submit a timesheet with not only the person's hours they worked, but any vacation, sick time, personal days they took, or holidays. For each employee, it's supposed to be submitted weekly. And that's one of my things that I want to recommend that the Personnel Board, we send to this board, and we have them follow through on that and create a central register, so when this happens, somebody's, leaving, what's on file in there is what you get.
Well, that's my recommendation.
Because there's a lack of, accountability and communication. You're taking somebody's word for it. There's no back record to go and double check.
Hold on. Bud first, and then you, Peter.
Just for the board's information, the highway department has been doing that, sending it over. We have it all spelled out in the spreadsheet. We provided that to the advisory board for their review, and a copy of that each week with the payroll warrant for the town account.
And several of the departments do send them in, because I've seen
Some
them.
do.
This department does do that.
Mr. Casper.
They used to put on the paycheck. They used to put on the paycheck, my boy.
They use it. That would be our goal, to try to get it back on.
I'm sorry if you thought I was being wise. I wasn't. I was just... So, do you have something new to add?
I was just going to say, I believe, yes, all the departments do it. Did anybody think, and I know when someone left my office, the personnel administrator was Jean, and Jean made sure and verified everything to make sure how it was calculated.
Yep.
And it was correct. So my question was, and I guess that's probably Polly's question, not that I want to talk for him, but did anybody go in those things you kept in the Scott's office, I believe? A copy each week, you send them over there. So, I mean, did anyone think you could just go into Scott's office and pull it out, just to check it? Whether it be on the conservation,
That I don't know.
People have to start looking at what they're signing and question things, and not just assume just because the department head signs things.
Yep.
And I'm not slamming anybody. I think people need to question and say, hey, did you come up with
I'm
these?
going in tomorrow, I'm going to ask for 220 on Monday.
I mean,
Sick leave. I can verify I'm sick.
our whole issue was.
You gotta give me the 220.
The conservation chair gonna sign it?
According to what he was paid for, he never took a sick day